All right, so now on to our next session. Please join me and welcome our next speaker, Paul McCullough, and his colleague who co-founded O2X, the Human Performance, in 2013. In addition to his role as a co-founder, Paul continues to play an active role in growth strategy at O2X. He oversees all areas of business development and continuously strives to bring O2X's world-class training and education to those who are looking for ways to optimize performance as individuals and at an organizational level. Total worker health. Prior to creating O2X, Paul served 11 years in the U.S. military as a Navy SEAL. He spent his career with the SEAL Team 8 and the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Please join me in welcoming Paul and his colleague to the stage.
Screen right here. How's everyone doing? 4 o'clock? 4:30? Am I the only one here that's just as concerned about cancer in the fire service as 82-year-olds responding to calls? That one caught me off guard. A little freaky. My name is Paul McCullough. I'm one of the founders of O2X. Just by chance, lucky enough to be speaking in front of Joe Finn, former commissioner of Boston Fire, Richie Paris, former president, and Doc Hamrock out of Boston as well. Just by chance, those three are really how we got started in the fire service back in 2015, right when Joe Finn took over. A little bit about myself. I grew up in New Hampshire, and when I got out of the SEAL teams, wanted to do something similar. I wanted to work with organizations, paramilitary type units. And when we first got out, we were doing some stuff with military units and some professional sport teams, Olympic athletes, that type of thing. And lucky enough, got a meeting with Joe Finn. And as you can see, Richie Paris back there, give a little wave. Clearly a poster child of human performance. So he was very excited to have us in. And so Richie came in, and we were talking about breathing and mindfulness and yoga, and he's like, "That's my guy." And so he gave us a shot at the title. But what was interesting is Boston, right around 1,500 members, 35-ish stations spread out throughout the city. And Joe Finn came on with a huge initiative to build out health and wellness as his number one priority to his members. Oldest department in the country, highly baked in tradition, not so much on the human performance side and health and wellness. Give us a shot. We ran one train the trainer type event in 2015. We took one person per house and went through a full human performance training and education curriculum. And that grew from there. And Joe called us and said, "Hey, we got great feedback. If I have this support and people are interested, I want to run with this health and wellness piece," right? So we went from one person per house to eventually one person per shift, to eventually doing a lot of screenings from a behavioral health standpoint, sleep, stress, resilience, to also injury prevention type stuff. We started running the first week of the training academy. We started doing more screenings, mobility screenings, eventually put somebody on site. And if you fast forward now to 2021, we've sort of taken all those lessons learned in the fire service and have bridged it for the most part nationwide. I'm not here to be someone that's jumping on a pedestal and claim that we have all the answers, but I could tell you what we do a lot is we test a little and learn a lot, and test a little and learn a lot. What we've come to see over the last 7 years or so with working with the fire service is just, it needs leadership. It needs a change. It's a culture problem. There is a culture problem in the fire service. And again, I don't come from a stance of pointing fingers, but I can tell you that there is a culture problem a little bit that is changing. And it is happening across the board, which is awesome to see. Typically what we see in general when we talk about cancer prevention is stuff like this, which is awesome. I love this, right? Very progressive nationwide. Obviously, we're at a symposium talking about cancer. The wipes, the hoods, the washing machines, the vents, we see all that stuff. But I do think there still is this underlying issue that lays within the fire service when it comes to what's the root of the problem, or a piece of a problem, I should say, a big piece of the problem. And you can see right here, just the harsh reality of it, right? So this is from the American Institute of Cancer Research. You're looking right about half, right? So half of the deaths close to it are lifestyle related. Something to consider. Right here, when we started putting together programs for O2X, we're not a physical fitness company, so that's clearly a piece of what we do, but it really is just a piece, right? But if we start paying attention to the behavioral health side of the house, the injury prevention side of the house, sleep hygiene, obviously the cancer rates, we got to be a little bit more widespread of how we're focusing our efforts. A lot of departments in today's day and age want to do some stuff with stress mitigation, sleep hygiene or something like that. But if you were just focusing on stress as just an example, and your members aren't sleeping, they're not eating healthy, they're not living a physical lifestyle, what do you think is going to happen to their stress levels, right? So all these things, while they're independent pillars, they're all codependent on each other. And I think that's really, a key component when we're starting talking about cancer rates in the fire service. Like I said, we do a ton of screenings. This is just some interesting data that we found over the last year or so. We've got close to 5,000 people screened at this point over the last year. So we'll go to departments, right? We'll do body comp, BMI, shoulders, knees, hip, backs, core for mobility, how well are people sleeping, how well they're eating. And we'd like to put together programs to attack some of these things. And it's just a cool little fact, if you look here of what, if BMI was something, what the likelihood of an injury would be. Kind of goes back to that previous slide when you're looking at injury rates in the fire ground, right about half of those injuries being soft tissue. That points to, strength and conditioning, physical fitness. It's not necessarily all these giant breaks and these things. When you're looking at the average BMI of close to 30 for these 5,000 so that we've looked at, and that's across the board. You can look right here. If you're obese, you're 5 times as likely to get injured, right? So something to consider. These are just some of our stats of those same 5,000 people, just something to look at for whether we've collected this information at workshops, at training events, at screenings, either or our full-time people that are staffed on site. The other interesting part about some of these stats, these are coming from people that are volunteering to give us this information, right? So picture going to any department in the country and putting 40 people in the room, and they're willing to jump on an in-body and check their body comp, right? So I would make a solid argument that a lot of the stats we're seeing here could be a lot worse if the people that aren't going to volunteer for these programs, we'd see it. But this is about of the right around 4,700 or so that we've tested recently. We're reporting, we refer to TAs, that's tactical athletes, we refer to the fire service as tactical athletes, reporting less than 6 hours of sleep a night. About half of them not conducting a warm-up prior to, and then you're also looking at what stress, affects you physically and mentally. Our approach here, I'm going to turn it over to Eamon in a second, but our approach here, and I'll highlight right at the end of what we believe to be true, is that all these pillars of performance have to be attacked. They have to be attacked on an individual level, but they also have to be attacked in that first statement where I'm saying these things are all combined in codependent on each other, right? If we're only looking at cancer in the fire service, but we're not evaluating the culture, what do we think is going to happen with those rates, right? If you only focus on sleep, if you only focus on strength and conditioning, you only focus on nutrition, you can't, right? We put a lot of time and energy, a lot of money behind cancer prevention. And I'm just here to make a solid argument that I think a lot of it starts with leadership and starts a lot with culture within the fire service. Members like Joe Finn, Jim Davis in the back, we're doing some work with at Fort Worth. These are people, everybody has an issue with budget, right? Everybody does. It's what you prioritize to make something happen. So to not go too long, Eamon's going to go over just a couple examples from like really small size departments, just initiatives that we've seen leaders take from a small scale to departments on a larger scale that have taken taken some of this stuff and run with it and seen some pretty cool, dramatic results in a relatively short amount of time. There is a decent amount of low-hanging fruit. So I'm just going to turn it over real quick if you want to just start with that.
Yeah, we have a slide on it too if you want to move forward into that. The first one that I'll go into here, that's Fire Chief Bill Spillane in Dedham, Mass. The big thing that he did across the board that made a massive impact in their department was he initially had some conversations with Joe Finn about what we were doing in Boston, but a 1,500 person department and a 66 to 70 person department are going to have to do two drastically different approaches. So where he looked at it was, how do I start this thing small, grow it over the course of a couple of years, and go back to the city, prove some effectiveness, but really focus on the culture piece overall and focus on the membership wanting to buy into the program. So he started off, we did some screenings for the whole department to give him a snapshot of where they were at from body composition standpoint, from their mobility, their injury rate or injury risk rates that we would develop for them. And then from there, develop training and education based off the status of the force. So go in, our orthopedic injuries, the big focus this year is weight loss, is body composition. What he did though, that I think was really special to get their department to where they are today, is he implemented a financial incentive for the firefighters, where if they participated in the program, they weren't getting paid overtime to go to the class. They weren't getting paid just to show up, but they had to show that on a consistent basis every single year. And when they would come to work, they would have to do a workout from a library that we had given them through some of the virtual resources. But what he did was say in 96 work days of their year, if they came in, they did a half an hour workout for 48 of them. So half of the times that they came to work, they would end up getting a $2,000 bonus at the end of the fiscal year. So July 1st. What he saw right away from them was that a lot of guys would fall off in the beginning. They would think that they had all this time to get those 48 days in. But when it got to be January 1st, time for New Year's resolutions, going towards that end of the fiscal year, he had guys showing up to work really just so that they could get their workout in. And it became a culture where people were coming in off shift, getting in the gyms together, and really doing a lot of the right things for whether it's the right or wrong reason. They're doing the right things, getting a lot healthier. This next one here, Loudoun County. So this one was cool because it was a department that didn't really have the financial means to implement what they wanted to do. But Scott Lance, the training captain that you can see in the middle there next to Paul, he was working on an AFG grant from FEMA. What he did was really shoot for a home run for a department their size. They're 550 members. He applied for a workshop for every single one of his members, and also screenings, assessments, and virtual resources for every single one of his members, as well as built in for every recruit class down the road to go to this training. So similar to the Boston Fire model, where train and educate the masses, screen the masses, figure out where the needs of the department are, and continue to develop programs from there. So this final one, which is really where at O2X, where we've seen a lot of the effectiveness of the program go, and the kind of new model that we've implemented in a lot of places. Frederick County, Maryland, what they did right off the bat was bring in an O2X strength and conditioning coach who had the power of the company behind them, 250 specialists giving her all the resources she needed to reach out to the 500 plus members of their department. But Kayla, who's on site there, what she does is works with the recruits when they have a school in, works with them doing fitness first thing in the morning, and then is really expeditionary, going into all the different firehouses and forcing people to do the right stuff. All the training and education in the world, if it's not used, is not valuable at all. What Kayla has done is go in and force people's hand, force them to do the right things, and she's seen a massive, massive impact over the course of the 2 years that she's been there. This final one, so Jim Davis sitting in the back here at Fort Worth. The cool thing that Fort Worth did, and I think we're going to see this a lot in the near future, is merging 1582, NFPA 1582 and 1583. So really what we've done here over the course of the past 2 years or so, Frontline Mobile Health is a company that does the NFPA 1582 physicals, and they're on site at Fort Worth. People go in, they go through the whole gamut, all the different testing that they need to do. But what it does is generate a lot of valuable data as far as how to mitigate that issue. So the way that that works is they'll go in, they'll do their screenings. Frontline will really address some of the issues with the individual, pass that data over to O2X, and then it's up to us on the remediation side. So all these members are armed with the resources they need to actually fix the occupational health issues that they have, versus just going in and hearing, you're all messed up, see you later, we'll see you next year when you're a little bit more messed up. That I think is something that needs to change, and Fort Worth is doing an awesome job of changing that.
Well, I'll end on this. So kind of back to that same logic in the beginning of all these pillars being interconnected. One just piece of advice, and this is not anything to do with O2X, or maybe it is, but just how you attack the problem, right? So one thing that we've learned with the fire service is it's relatively a decentralized, organization. While you have people that come to shift, you're also not with these people on a greater scale, right? So one thing that we've taken is attacking this at many different angles, kind of how Chief Davis is looking at Fort Worth of saying, okay, I have this 1582 thing where I'm grabbing all my physicals that we have to do. Well, congratulations, what's next? You see this a lot in the military units. You fail a PT test, congratulations, what do you do next? Right? So what do you take from that information? How do you take it one step further? So merging that piece. What we talk about here is just a bucket of stuff. We have training and education, we have screenings, we have assessments, we have virtual support, we have resources at home. But what I would say outside of, I'll just put all three of these up here, you need all of them. How much you have of each one of them, that comes down to time, resources, budget, I get it. But we started with Joe Finn back in 2015 in the fire service with 100% effort to collect as much data as we possibly could, with the concept of running a train the trainer workshop. But we were drinking our own Kool-Aid, if I'm being completely honest with you. We were like, this workshop is going to be awesome. And it was really well received. But if you're trying to actually make a change, you can't just run a workshop and expect it's going to be done. Train the trainer approach in the fire service, it's great. But I can tell you right now, from running O2X for the last almost 10 years, we don't push train the trainer programs anymore because they don't work. Why don't they work? Is because it's an impossible task. You train up, let's say you have 1,500 firefighters, you train up 20 of them, and you're like, good luck. Go teach the masses. You're now a strength and conditioning coach, a nutritionist, injury prevention specialist, a yoga teacher, and then they have no resources to back the program after that, right? So what happened, we ran this workshop, we got unbelievable reviews. It's awesome. We ran another one, we got great reviews. We ran another one, we got great reviews. But then you fast forward in time, there's a window, right? It's like a sunburn session. You go through a great program, 6 months later, a year later, you're back at the same place you started. So what we think now is the key is incorporating all of this stuff at whatever way you can. And if you can do it internally, that's awesome. Do it internally. But you need some level of a drip campaign of training and education that has to be given to the masses. You do that with other things in the fire service, whether you're doing some ladder work or you're going somewhere. People know this is general training that has to happen a year. You go to a fire service and ask for a show of hands of how many people have gone through a sleep hygiene class in the last 30 years, you're going to get a very small show of hands. But yet, half of them don't sleep more than 6 hours a night. The example in Boston, you have 10% of your group down with an orthopedic injury, diagnosing a new cancer case on average every 2 to 3 weeks. Average weight gain on the job, was 18 pounds first year there. Average firehouse meal was 3,500 calories. You're doing all these things, right? You need to hit this on a regular basis. It needs to be human performance training and education should be a regular component of the job if you want to sustain high levels of performance over a 30-year career. So you need a drip campaign of that. You need to collect data from a screening and assessment standpoint. At least for nothing else from a leader, like know how all your members are sleeping, know what their mobility is, know what their body comp is, know what their stress levels are, know how much they're sleeping, know all these things so that you can tailor maybe different training and education programs for them. And then the last piece is the virtual side, the support when you're not in front of these people. So how do you keep a program going when you're gone? So think through that as well. We believe it's that you need actually to put someone that looks at this, not as a part-time basis, but as a full-time role, that actually has a background in it. Because what happens in the fire service is someone's into physical fitness, and next thing you know, they're the health and wellness person, and they're there for 2 years, and then they're gone, right? So a lot of the units in SOCOM, you'll see they actually have a human performance team. They've dedicated their life to very specific subjects, and they're staring at data, and they're making information. Test a little, learn a lot. Test a little, learn a lot. So that's just our advice from anyone that's looking to build something out. And I'll pause there if there's any questions.
All right, so we'll take, we have a few minutes, so why don't we entertain some questions from here live in the room and as well as online. Any questions from the room? Heather?
What was some of the pushback, though? There had to have been pushback.
Oh, yeah.
So what was some of the pushback so that if we want to try to implement that, maybe we can get ahead of the game and be ready for pushback?
Nothing, unanimous support.
You're so
There's a lot of pushback. Depending on the organization, how well union and management works together can be an issue. We've really graduated past that. Number one issue is budget, always. Everything comes down to budget. And then leadership. 100% of the partners that we have, 100% come down to somebody in the department that is willing to make an impact. And that necessarily is not always the fire chief. Typically, it's the fire chief that goes in there. If not, it's somebody that's trying to push it up internally, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting. But yeah, I'd be lying to say that budget is the number one issue, and there is pushback on it. I think there's a lot of failed health and wellness programs, if I'm being fair, in the fire service. A lot of times, stuff might come down from city managers. That's a blanket wellness plan. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus that's on that, but oftentimes if it's a city wellness plan and it's offered to DPW, police, fire, widespread, thousands of people, and it's some incentivized based program, doesn't get much buy-in. We find the biggest buy-in comes down from some type of in-person piece in the beginning. And then from there, you watch the culture start to change internally. That's massively important. But 100% of the pushback is budget and then leader in charge. You got a leader in there that's crushing it and is not progressive and is not, thinking outside the box. It's not going to happen. And I can tell you the fire service has a great history of saying this is the way we've always done it, so that makes it right. And I'm here to tell you that that's not accurate. I'm sorry.
So Paul, in your space, where do you see virtual reality? Like with this regarding resiliency, and all the different stuff that you see in your special operations, as well as your business now. Do you see VR as being a future opportunity?
I think so. Yes and no. We've talked about.
Can you repeat the question, please, from the
Yeah,
podium?
so
Thanks.
Chief Davis's question was involved around incorporating some type of virtuality and tech involved in the human performance space. I think all that's great. I do think that the fire service tends to overcomplicate some stuff. Again, if we back up to my original point of people be in the job for 30 years and have done the same thing, and you ask for a show of hands of who's done this, I think the fire service needs to start considering themselves to be athletes. I'm not saying they need to break any records. I'm not saying they need to compete for the game, but I could tell you that we've done a lot of work with professional athletes and Olympic athletes, and they're super easy to train because they're 24 years old. They have a 16-week season, right? And they have an off season. They know what position they play. You're a wide receiver. You're going to play for this amount of time, and you can put a training program together for that. So I think tech is huge, though. I think you need to be able to collect the data. The real world scenarios, I think, is good, that type of training. I see a lot of value there. But I think, back to the test a little, learn a lot. I think you need to put people into some level training and education, put them through something, look at the data, and be able to give an honest assessment of where your department sits. If you find that, I'll tell you what, I'll leave the department's name out of it. We screened 100% of firefighters with right around a 600 to 700 person agency over the course of 3 months. We did their body comp, we did their mobility, and we did some behavioral health screenings. I took the average body comp out of each one of those months, and it was in the obese category for each one. Now, those are, I think, a little bit tighter of parameters than people would want, but the average body comp from each one of those 3 fell in the obese category. And I talked to the same department. They were looking at buying like one of those like $30,000 eggs to test the, the body comp. And I'm like, okay, well, let's say the in-body tells you, that thing's 0.5% more accurate. Your firefighter's still fat. So, let's just put the person on a scale, give them some training and education, give them resources to continue. So I think the answer would be yes. I think incorporating any of that, anything to reach, to look outside the box and see it. But I think simplicity is probably the best move.
All right, thank you very much, both of you. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. I'd like to invite back to the stage Ed Klima.